a wave so that I might be sure that I'm not talking to myself. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Wilfred. We are good. We are good. We are good. So welcome again to our webinar. This is another exciting sector that we'll be talking about. I am your webinar moderator, Moya Timothy from RWK Africa. You are so much welcome. You can also join our live feed on Instagram on our pages at RWK Africa. Yeah, just giving you their options. So probably on a light note as we start, I'd like us to start with a quote from Dennis Haley, who say that the difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion is the thickness of a prison wall. So yeah, well, when you're involved in tax avoidance and tax evasion, probably the difference between the two of you will be how thick the prison walls are. Okay, so much welcome. So today I'd like us to look at NGOs and charitable trusts. And basically we shall cover an introduction of the same. We shall look at tax exemptions, the income for NGOs and charitable trusts. We shall look at the tax obligation that affects NGOs and charitable trusts. We shall also look at the costly mistakes to avoid when you are in this sector. And we shall have a few practical case studies that will help us understand more about NGOs and charitable trusts, and also where KRA comes in. So you'll find that every year many charitable organizations are usually surprised when they receive communication from KRA, be it tax assessments, be it audit notices, be it compliance queries. Most of the time, this surprise often stems from a common misconception that registration as a charitable organization automatically will exempt an entity from all the taxes. But in reality, registration and tax exemption are very two distinct legal concepts. On one hand, registration gives an organization legal personality, while tax exemption is usually a statutory privilege that must be applied for, then it will be granted, and then you have to continuously maintain your status to continue enjoying the benefits of tax exemption. So this distinction is the foundation of effective tax governance as far as these two sectors are concerned. So for every trustee, for every director, for every finance manager, for every accountant, for every tax advisor working with the non-profit sector, I think it is very important that you find a distinction between the two, so that it will actually help you to counter KRA as it comes. So in today's webinar, we shall solely base on where KRA actually comes in. We shall not diverge a lot into the operations of NGOs and charitable trusts and the contents of the Public Benefit Organization Act. We shall just solely focus on what KRA, the interest of KRA in these sectors. So my question today as we start, if your organization or if your charitable trust received a KRA audit notice this afternoon, would you be confident to say that you're fully compliant? Or will your finance team suddenly become very busy, not knowing what they ought to have done 5 years ago? So the best date to start something was yesterday. The next best time to do it is right now. So hopefully, as we engage in this webinar, as we go through the precepts of KRA as far as these organizations are concerned, I hope it will shed a light on your operations, your misconceptions, your perceptions, and also generally your knowledge as far as NGOs and charitable trusts are concerned and their relationships with KRA. So just a brief introduction on what an NGO is. We shall not dwell so much on how the PBO Act defines it, but in a layman's language, they are basically non-profit entities which are established to advance activities that promote public benefit rather than private gain. That is basically the layman's introduction, or rather definition, of an NGO. So these activities, they are vast activities from education to healthcare, poverty alleviation, environmental conservation, humanitarian relief, religion, social justice, and community development. So before you categorize your organization as a not-for-profit, ask yourself, does it promote public benefit rather than private gain? Number two, does it check any of these boxes that we have mentioned? If not, then you're running a business and you're at risk of actually being audited by KRA and also paying the taxes that you ought to have paid when you illegally acquire the benefits of an NGO. So as we continue to engage, if there are any questions, you're free to ask them on the chat box. I will try my level best to answer all of them. And also I have a very able co-host who will be answering some of your questions as we move on. And hopefully by the end of this session, we would have looked at all your queries as far as KRA is concerned, as far as NGOs and charitable trusts are actually concerned. So for our interests, for the purpose of taxes, I'd like us to look at the first schedule of the Income Tax Act. That is usually in paragraph 10. I have my book here. So I'd like to read it directly so that I'm not accused of spreading rumors. I'd like to read it directly from the Income Tax Act. Income Tax Act, that is the first schedule. Paragraph 10. So for avoidance of doubt, for avoidance of ambiguity, yeah, I'd like to read that so that this will be the building block for this webinar. And basically this should be your definition of your organization, if it is an NGO or not. So this is paragraph 10 of the first schedule. The first schedule, in a nutshell, as far as the Income Tax Act and also the VAT Act is concerned, talks about exemptions. So I will look at the first schedule of the Income Tax Act. They are different. So this one is for Cap 470 of the Income Tax Act, which states, subject to Section 26, the income of an institution, body of persons, or trust of a public character established solely for the purpose of relief of poverty, distress of the public, advancement of religion, or education, established in Kenya or whose regional headquarters is in Kenya, is so far as the commissioner is satisfied that the income is to be expended either in Kenya or in circumstances in which the expenditure of that income is for the purpose which results for the benefits of the residents in Kenya. So I hope we are following. So it also goes ahead and says, provided that any such income which consists of gains or profit from a business shall not be exempt from taxes unless such gains or profit are applied solely for the purpose. I'd like to stop there for now. We shall finish the last part later when we look at different incomes. So basically what paragraph 10 of the Income Tax Act, of the first schedule of the Income Tax Act states is if the income of an organization is exempt, if it is done for, if it exists for the distress of poverty, for the distress of, for the relief of poverty, distress of the public, advancement of religion or education. So that is our definition as far as the Income Tax Act is concerned, and also which provides exemption. Since we have looked at the introduction, so basically an NGO exists for public benefit, not private. Number two, it does not distribute profit to members. It is governed by a constitution or other governing instruments. It also be managed by a board, and it's accountable to regulators, donors, and beneficiaries, and public. It must also comply with the applicable tax laws and financial reporting obligation. That is very important because you'll find that in some of the businesses that I have actually encountered, just because someone has gotten a grant from, let's say, donors from outside the country, they assume that will automatically mean that whatever they're doing locally is an NGO or is exempt from tax. That cannot be further from the truth. So if your organization does not fulfill all these characteristics, then it's not an NGO. So just a quote, a non-profit organization may not pursue profit, but it should never ignore taxes. The two are very different. But these are two very different conversations. Good trustees protect donors. Good trustees protect donor funds, but great trustees also protect the organization from basically avoidable taxes. I think that's very important, that a non-profit organization, basically it might not pursue profit, but it should never ignore taxes. A good trustee, if you have been trusted by the organization with funds, should protect donor funds. Great trustees also protect the organizations from avoidable tax penalties. So that's basically the difference between a good trustee and a great trustee. A good trustee, you might protect the donor funds, but a great one also does not ignore KRA. So the question is, why does government grant tax exemptions? Number one, tax exemptions are granted because uh, charitable organizations perform public functions, or rather complement public service delivery. Government, by length, recognizes the organizations engaged in these sectors, and they basically help reduce pressure on public resources. But however, exemption granted on this understanding, exemption is granted on the understanding that the organization resources are applied for public benefit rather than private enrichment. The second part of paragraph 10 of the FAT schedule basically talks about tax exemption and the issuance of a tax exemption certificate. It is very important to note that for NGOs, you are required by law to have an exemption certificate for you to be able to comfortably enjoy exemption from income tax. A lot of organizations yes, they do. The activities are compliant with the definitions of paragraph 10, but they do not have the proper documentation to show that they're exempt from income tax. You might run into problems with KRA because the first question they will ask you, do you run an NGO? Your answer will be yes. Do your activities align with the definition of paragraph 10? You will tick that box. And then they'll ask you, do you have a income tax exemption certificate from KRA? That is where everything now will start falling. They might use that to actually make assessments. But as we shall later look, I'd like us to hold that thought for a moment, and we'll answer the question that begs, if I do not have an income tax exemption certificate, am I compelled to pay income tax as an NGO? We shall answer that question as we come towards basically the middle or the end of this webinar. So yeah, the devil is in the details. We shall answer it one or the other. So it's very important as a manager, as a finance manager, as a trustee, also as an accountant or as a tax expert involved with charitable organization, to not ignore the extent to which taxes are required for NGOs. So I'd like us to look at tax exemptions and income tax for NGOs and charitable trusts. Taxes for both businesses and NGOs are certain, but tax exemptions, they're never automatic. So many NGO managers believe the exemption certificate is like a passport, like it lasts forever. But in the eyes of KRA, they consider it more of a driving license. It comes with conditions, responsibilities, and can be withdrawn if it is abused. So the fact that you have applied for an exemption certificate and you have gotten an exemption certificate does not mean that you'll just be exempted forever. Number one, exemption certificates are usually valid for 5 years. After every 5 years, you're supposed to apply for another exemption certificate. Upon application, KRA is supposed to issue the exemption certificate within 60 days. That is, after you have made your application, KRA will audit your activities to verify that they're consistent with the requirements of paragraph 10. When everything is said and done, then they will issue you with an exemption certificate for income tax. And one important thing to note, KRA can withdraw the certificate at any given time within the 5 years if there is evidence that the certificate has been abused. That is, the public benefit, the private benefit outweighs the public benefit. So at any given point within the 5 years, even if you have an exemption certificate, KRA might look at into your affairs, and if they establish that the exemption has been abused, then it can be withdrawn at any time. So I'll start with one misconception. Because one of the greatest misconceptions in the NGO is the belief that once an organization has been registered as an NGO or a charitable trust, it automatically becomes exempt from all taxes. And just for clarification purposes, when we talk about trust today, we are exclusively talking about charitable trusts, not a blanket treatment of all the trusts. The treatment that we're going to talk about today are for exclusively charitable trusts. I hope you note that. So any other trust that is not a charitable trust, they are treated differently. But today we are only looking at charitable trusts because they share a lot of similarities with NGOs. So this is actually a very wrong misconception that just because you are registered as an NGO or a charitable trust, you are exempt from all taxes. It is very wrong because the Income Tax Act grants exemptions only to organizations that satisfy specific legal conditions and continues to apply the income exclusively towards recognizable charitable purposes. So something very important, a tax exemption is therefore basically a statutory privilege. It is not a right. I hope that is clear. It is not a right, it is more of a privilege. And when we talk about exemptions, this only applies to Income Tax Act, not any other kind of taxes. As we shall look at the other taxes that affect NGOs and what is supposed to be done about them. So we'll say this, this exemption, as far as paragraph 10, as we have read, is concerned, applies to institutions established solely for charitable purposes, and where the statutory conditions are satisfied and the commissioner is satisfied. So you have to satisfy the statutory conditions as far as the PBO Act of 2013 is concerned, and also the commissioner upon application is satisfied that the organization qualifies for exemption. That is the only point, that the organization is going to be issued a tax exempt certificate. But something important to note is the commissioner retains oversight to ensure the organization continues to meet the conditions upon which the exemption was granted. So if there is any change, if it does not align with the conditions upon which the exemption was granted, then the commissioner has the right to revoke it at any given point, as I have mentioned earlier. So something very important to note, the quickest way to lose a tax exemption is to start treating charitable assets as personal assets. You use assets for organization for private use. That is one of the easiest way to lose your exemption, because you're benefiting as an individual more than the public is benefiting. So once that is established, you will lose your status as an exempt body. And later on, we shall look at the triggers that will instigate this. What are the telltale signs that you are using charitable assets for private use? So the question is, what does tax exemption really mean? So tax exemption, in our layman's language, means that the qualifying income is not subject to income tax. Let us underline income tax. As far as VAT is concerned, please look at the first schedule of the VAT Act. That is totally different. Today we are looking at exemptions under Cap 470 of the Income Tax Act. So under the Income Tax Act, the definition is the income is not subject to income tax. So it does not mean that the organization is exempt from every other tax administered by KRA. Number one, a tax-exempt organization, NGOs, that is, number one, they're supposed to deduct and remit payee. Number two, they're supposed to deduct and pay withholding taxes where applicable. Number three, they're supposed to register for VAT if the legal requirements are met. If you are dealing with a vertible activity, commercial activity, then you're supposed to register for VAT and pay VAT on a monthly basis. We shall expound that more because I know it is one of the most misunderstood areas as far as the VAT is concerned, as far as NGOs are concerned. Yeah, we've had a lot of cases whereby assessments are being raised under VAT, but the taxpayer comes and say, no, we are an NGO, we do charitable, sinafanya kazi ya Mungu, na pesa yenye tunapata huku yote we use it for NGO activities, but why are we paying VAT? We shall look at the nexus of those, of the two. Also, you're supposed to file your tax returns. You have an NGO, you have a charitable trust, you have registered your NGO as maybe even a CBO, and there is revenue that actually comes in. You're supposed to file your tax returns. Also, you're supposed to maintain proper accounting records as required by law. Also, you're supposed to respond to KRA audits and compliance and reviews. When you find a letter from KRA, it does not matter if you're an NGO or a charitable trust. There is nothing charitable about KRA returns. There's nothing charitable about taxes. So you have to respond to KRA audits and compliance reviews. And as we have stated a lot of times in our webinars, when you get the compliance reviews and the audits, does not matter how much they would want to downscale it. Ensure the first meeting you go with your tax consultant. It might seem far-fetched, but it is very important. So this distinction is often overlooked and has resulted in very significant assessments against charitable organizations and NGOs. So basically, you'll find that your intentions are very pure. You are actually helping people, like really helping people. You are feeding the hungry, you're educating people, but you find yourself being given a very huge tax bill. And at the end of the day, the person who suffers the most would be the beneficiary. But then again, if you are compliant, none of this would have happened. So ignorance is no defense. It does not matter how much you will tell KRA that you didn't know about this. It won't really matter how much you are doing to the community if you're not compliant. So to avoid all this, let's ensure that we get our facts very straight. Yeah, we get our facts very straight, and so that you can be in good standing. we can be in good standing with KRA. So as we continue with this webinar, please continue asking your questions. Yeah, continue asking your questions. If you've got any comment, you can look at our chat box. If you've got any queries, please do. Yeah, as we continue, so that while we continue with the webinar, also your queries are going to be answered. I hope I'm making sense. I hope I am talking to people. Yeah. Thank you so much. So that is basically what we define an exemption, how we define an exemption. So something important to note, did you know that many NGOs that have never paid corporation tax have nevertheless been assessed millions of shillings in pay and withholding taxes, just because they assumed tax exemption meant exemption from all tax obligation? Did you know that? So to qualify for and maintain exemption, an organization should generally demonstrate that, number one, it has been established exclusively for recognized charitable purposes, and its governing documents prohibit distribution of profits to members. So if there is any condition for that, the profits have been distributed to members, then it is not, you are going to be taxable as far as income tax is concerned. So an NGO may receive income from a variety of sources. The most common is donations, grants, membership, subscription. You can do fundraising. Some NGOs actually do investments, or they actually have property that they rent. You will find that some of them, they get their fees from training fees and consultancy services. Also, some do some publication or conference facilities. Others even do agricultural projects. This is basically done so that they would avoid a lot of donor dependency. However, not every receipt is treated in the same manner for tax purposes. The appropriate treatment of taxes depend on, number one, the nature of the income. How was it gotten? Is the source vertible or not? Number two, the purpose for which it is earned. As we have already in paragraph 10, we have been told, provided that any such income which consists of gains or profit from a business is used for charitable trust, for charitable activities or NGOs, then it will actually be exempt. So basically, this is what it means. If you have donations and grants, at the same time you have property or investment income, if you can prove that this rental income, the income generated from rental activities or from training or from consultancy services or any other income has been used for the objectives of the NGO, then it will qualify to be an income that will be exempt from tax. But if there is evidence that the income has been diverted for other purposes, then it disqualifies it from actually being exempt. So can an organization lose its tax exemption? Definitely yes. So where it ceases to satisfy the statutory requirements, the commissioner may review its status and take appropriate action in accordance to the law. So basically, what we have said is earlier that it might be revoked at any given time. So it is not a passport rather than a driving license. So I think the best way moving forward, I'd like us to look at an illustration to see how different incomes can be treated for tax purposes as far as NGOs and charitable trusts are concerned. So picture this. Hope for Tomorrow Foundation is a registered charitable organization that enjoys income tax exemption. So basically what it means, they have an exemption certificate. So during the year, the donor grant was 150 million. And then from its training services, they got 6 million. From hiring of the conference halls, they got 3 million. From rental income, they got 2 million. From treasury bills, that is basically investment income, they got 1 million. So the first question is, which receipts fall within the charitable activities of the organization? If you can be able to answer all these questions, then you will be able to actually know which income is exempt from income tax and which income needs further tax analysis. Then another question you might ask yourself, which receipt requires further tax analysis? I'll give an example. I'd like us to look at the conference hall hire. Just an example, because if you look at it, all apart from the donor grants, training fees are usually vertible, right? So that requires further analysis. You look at the threshold as far as Section 34 of the VAT Act is concerned. Does it meet the threshold of 5 million? Yes, it does. So does it qualify for VAT? Yes, it does. But the question is, who are being trained? That can only be found out in the first schedule of the VAT Act, if they're exempt, if they were being used as an education facility or for commercial purposes. Number two, we have conference halls, that is 3 million. So is it vertible? Yes, it is. Does it meet the threshold? Ideally, if there are prospects of actually the income growing in future, you can do voluntary registration. But then again, the question begs, these conference halls, are they used for education purposes or for social arts? If that is the question, then it is exempt as far as the VAT Act is concerned. So as you look at, with the mere explanation that I've given, one look for an income does not really qualify it or disqualify it from any other taxes. Yes, as far as income tax is concerned, if the income that has been gotten from training and conference hall hire and rental income and treasury bills are being used for the purposes, or rather for the objectives of the NGO, the trust, then they will be exempt. But the more important question is are they vertible activities? If they are vertible activities and they qualify for VAT, then you're supposed to register and actually pay VAT on the same. That means even when you're charging, you charge VAT while you're hiring and when you're training. Then another question begs, what about withholding? Are you dealing with consultants? Are you withholding? So it is never a blanket answer as far as NGOs and charitable trusts are concerned. You have to look at, there has to be a further analysis as far as taxes are concerned. And then also if the profit, some of the profit is diverted to the board of trustees, then that is also a reason for the tax exemption to be revoked. So with this illustration, it shows that we cannot have a blanket answer as far as NGOs are concerned. It is on a basis to basis issue. That is why it is important to keep your tax consultant close. Failure to do that, KRA will move closer, with or without your consent, mostly without your consent, but yeah, they will. It is usually more of an eventuality rather than a probability. So let us be very careful when handling NGOs and charitable trust funds. We have looked at exemptions. I'd like us to look at obligations. And before I do that, I welcome any questions as far as what we have covered is concerned. I'd like us to look at any. I'd like to answer any queries that any of you has. We have Lucy. She's asking if our conference halls are used for trainings and spiritual activities. For a few, are they exempted? Answering Lucy, I would actually request you to look at the first schedule of the VAT Act on the definition of hiring of conference halls. I think when instead of actually spoon feeding you, or rather giving everything, because it will give you a lengthy explanation. It will actually give you a lengthy description of what you're supposed to do, what the factors that you're supposed to consider. Because basically the VAT Act, the first schedule talks about educational activities, does not mention religious activities. So I have answered you in partly, but I think it will be good to look at that exhaustively. Are NGOs employees exempt from pay? The answer is no. The answer is an absolute no. Yeah, because the organization is the one which is exempt. The people in it are not exempt. You're not an exempt body. I had when we were a few months ago, I encountered a situation whereby we had a Kenyan resident who works for the UN, and he works in one of the East African countries. So what the person was saying is they're not deducted taxes. Like you're given your full salary. So the question was, will I have to declare it in Kenya? Because I work for an organization that is exempt. So the answer is yes. You are supposed to do that. You're supposed to do that. You're supposed to actually declare and pay your pay. It is the organization that is exempt, not you as an individual. So someone is asking, explain something on e-teams and teams. I will cover that in the later stages. Are NGOs supposed to have e-teams? Yeah, we'll answer that. But of course, the answer is yes. I'll explain why. Then someone, Kimeo, is asking, are churches required to pay taxes? Churches fall under religious activities, so they are not required to pay taxes, but you're supposed to keep your books. You're supposed to pay all other taxes. And if, as we've seen most churches do nowadays, If the church compound is big enough, they start a school. So if the income from the school benefits only the pastor, then it is taxable because it's a business. And we have a lot of qualifying, we have a lot of variables as far as schools are concerned. We shall cover it in one of our subsequent webinars, whereby a private school can be exempted from income tax if it offers full sponsorship to a certain number of students. So yeah, we shall cover that, but generally churches, they fall under religious institutions, so they're not required to pay taxes. So as we continue with the webinar, some of the other questions will be answered but I will come back and answer also some of the other questions, but also my co-host will also help you answer some of the queries that you have. Please do not hesitate. So Jim Ochieng is asking, when you say the income is exempt, does the exemption qualify even without a valid exemption certificate? Jim, back at the end of the webinar, it is usually, most of the time, it is usually a gray area. And if you would want to get a recording for the webinar, please sign up. A link has been provided. So yes, sign up. So someone is asking, the scenario for UN employee, pay is deducted from both employee and employer. So just to clarify, pay is usually, it is borne by the employee. It's usually deducted from the employee's salary, but paid by the employer. So the employer does not have any obligation to pay your payee. His role is to withhold your payee and then submit it to KRA. But basically, how payee works is your salary is deducted payee, and then your employer pays it on your behalf. So I think it's something very important to note. So as we look at the obligations, I'll come back to answer also some of the questions. I see there are a lot of questions, which is very encouraging. Some of them will be answered, and I'll also answer some, so that at the end of the day, all your queries have been answered. As we begin with the tax obligations, we'll say this, that the only thing more expensive than paying taxes is failing to pay the right taxes. It's actually very expensive. Very expensive. It is not only bad not to pay taxes, but it's even worse when you fail to pay the right taxes, because at the end of the day, you'll have to pay the right taxes. So as an NGO accountant once said, which is basically the notion most of us have. So he said, we do not pay taxes. And then KRA replied, excellent. This is perfect. How about we begin with payee? Yeah, so while many NGOs qualify for tax exemption on qualifying income, they remain subject to numerous obligations under tax laws. In practice, most disputes between charitable organizations and KRA do not rise because NGOs fail to obtain an exemption certificate. Rather, They arise because organizations overlook routine compliance obligations, such as, number one, we have payee. Number two, we have withholding taxes. Number three, we have VAT. And most of the time, it is basically a result of poor record keeping. So if these four areas is where usually KRA captures a lot of NGOs. Someone has asked if it is compulsory to have an exemption certificate for you not to pay taxes. The answer is, by law, yes, you're supposed to do that. But how many NGOs actually have exemption certificates? So you'll find in a lot of cases, KRA is usually, I won't say complacent, but they're usually flexible as far as that requirement is concerned. They will not ask you about your income tax, although they will ask about your exemption certificate. But what they will really pin you on is the pay, withholding taxes, VAT, and if you're keeping your records right or wrong. I will expound more on record keeping and how it gives rise to a lot of assessments. But this does not, I am not saying that NGO should not obtain an exemption certificate. You are required by law to have an exemption certificate for you to enjoy being exempted from income tax. But I would actually recommend a case about Thika Baptist. It was a case between Thika Baptist Church and the commissioner. So I would like you to just go online and Google about the case, and then you'll have your answer. But I would want to categorically say that I am not saying that it is not a must to have an exemption certificate. I hope I'm not misquoted. You are required by law to have an exemption certificate. I hope I'm clear. More of a disclaimer. So NGOs, every NGO should ask the following questions. Apart from income tax, what other taxes could apply to an organization? So the answer usually depends on the nature of the organization's activities rather than the status of the trust or of the NGO. So basically what you have here is a table. It is more of a simplified version of the table. We'll look at an NGO and the taxes that might affect it, and we see if they are affected by NGO or not, by taxes or not. Number one, we have income tax. Does it apply to NGO? The answer is yes. What is the trigger? The trigger is commercial services, or rather commercial income from commercial services or activities, or also income that is not exempt. So any income that is commercial in nature or is not exempt as far as paragraph 10 is concerned, then it is taxable. But as you said, if it can be demonstrated that the income generated was being used for self-sustenance of the NGO or for public benefit, then it will be exempt. Number two, we have payee. Does it apply to NGO? The answer is yes. Whom does it affect? The employment income. Number three, we have withholding taxes. Does it apply to NGOs? The answer is yes. Who are these people? We have consultants. We have suppliers. We have some NGOs have been appointed as rent withholding agents. They're supposed to withhold if you've been appointed as an agent. And also we'll find that there are NGOs who actually do a lot of good charitable works. They go on building houses for widows and orphans. They go on digging wells. So they use contractors. The interest of KRA would have been the contractor that you used to drill that borehole, the contractor that you used to build that house. Did you withhold? If the answer is no, then you'll be in problems with KRA. We have VAT. I think I have explained a little bit on VAT. So yes, VAT affects NGOs. And if your supplies are revertible, then and you meet the threshold of 5 million, then you're supposed to register for VAT. In other circumstances, you do not necessarily have to wait for the threshold of 5 million because you run a risk of, nowadays what we have seen KRA do, they actually usually backdate your VAT to the time that you began, which is usually burdensome to a lot of taxpayers. So to avoid all this, if you have vertible activities, even if they bring income to the organization, add VAT on the charges, and pay your VAT on a monthly basis. We have custom duties. Does it affect NGO? The answer is yes, when it is during the importation of goods. So I like to talk, I would look at customs duties and I'll explain how actually NGOs can take advantage of being exempt so as to avoid, not really to avoid, to be exempted from from these duties when it comes to importation of goods. Then excise duty, rarely does it affect unless you're dealing with exercisable goods. Then stamp duties, yeah, sometimes when you're dealing with, especially when you're doing property transactions and transfers, then yeah, you'll be required to pay a stamp duty. So let us look at pay as you earn, because it is one of the major tax liabilities for NGOs. The easiest way to create a tax liability is to forget that employees still pay taxes, even when they work for charities. If an employee is being paid, then you have to pay, you have to withhold and pay the taxes they pay. This does not only fall on their basic salary, also all allowances given to employees, even if they're working for charitable organizations, they're supposed to be added back and then they are taxed as payee. So every employer is required to deduct pay from taxable employment income and remit the same to KRA. Usually it's done before the 9th of every month. So the charitable nature of an organization does not relieve it from this responsibility. As we have clearly stated, the exemption is for the organization, not for the employees. I hope that is more than clear. And as we have stated, besides the basic salary, if your employees are being provided housing allowance, commuter allowance, airtime allowance, fuel allowance, entertainment, overtime, bonus, leave pay, gratuity. Gratuity currently has been exempt, but if you are being given any of this, just like any other employer in the commercial sense, you are not exempt from pay. You're supposed to add it back where applicable and being taxed. So something important to note, finance managers frequently overlook employment benefits. For example, an employee is given a car. An employer pays the school fees for the employee. They're given housing. They're given low interest loans, which should be subject to fringe benefits. They're given medical benefits, club subscription, and utilities. Any of these, they're usually treated just like any other employee who is not working for an NGO. So failure to account for these benefits correctly often results in pay assessments during KRA audits. So we have to be very careful about benefits that are being given to employees, and they're supposed, if they are taxable benefits, then tax them. We have a lot of NGOs usually classify the employees as volunteers. Most of the time, their thinking is, if we say that these are volunteers, then they'll be exempted from pay. That is wrong. This is usually an area which is frequently misunderstood. Calling someone a volunteer in court does not automatically exempt payment from employment taxes. Because if an individual performs duties under conditions resembling employment and they receive a regular remuneration, KRA will treat that person as an employee, regardless of the title. In most cases, they're usually treated as employees, and their tax obligations are usually added back, and the employer will end up paying it. Number two, we have withholding taxes. So consultants enjoy receiving gross payments, but KRA prefers receiving withholding tax first. Yeah, KRA, their preference is like, okay, we give us our withholding tax first. Whatever you do with the rest, that is up to you. Of course, at the end of the year, they'll have to declare the gross. But it is important for us we working in the NGO sector, to ensure that we withhold gross payments. So this is one of the most overlooked compliance obligations within the nonprofit sector. An NGO making certain payments may be required to deduct taxes at source and remit it to KRA. So some of these services, professional services, legal services, audit services, management services, contractual services, all these are supposed to be withheld, either 3% or 5%, depending on the kind of service. And by law, any payments made to consultants, any payments made to contractors that are above 24,000 in a month, is supposed to withhold. So that is a very important thing to note. Failure to deduct tax does not extinguish liability. It does not, just because you do not withhold, just because you paid the full amount, it does not extinguish the liability. What it does, it merely shifts the burden to the organization. So yeah, but by extension, you're still doing your charitable activities, because it is more like you're donating to the government, which will actually do these social services. Okay, to what extent that is debatable, but yeah, it is like you're being charitable enough to donate some of your funds to the government in form of taxes. I doubt if there is anyone who will be willing to do that. Then number three, we have VAT. We have talked about VAT, but I'll just like to mention this, that VAT is another area where misconception frequently arises, right? Many NGOs assume that because they receive donor funding, they're automatically exempt from VAT. This assumption is very incorrect. VAT applies based on the nature of supplies made, not on whether the supplier is charitable or not. I would like to say this. There's usually a very big misconception. VAT and income tax are two distinct taxes, right? Because I'll give an example. If the value of a substance is 100 shillings, right? and then it's supposed to be vertible, so we add 16 shillings. So the cost will still be 100 shillings. That is what will fall under income tax. The only amount that will fall under VAT, which is value added, will be the 100 plus 16. So if you're valuing an activity or rather supply at 100 shillings, and then you're supposed to pay VAT, so you'll add 16 shillings. The value does not change from 100. The value still remains at 100. But this 16 shillings that you've added on top, you're supposed to pay VAT. So basically, from the very start, that was not your money. That was money that was added above the value of your item, which the above value, that is what is supposed to be remitted to KRA. So just like it affects other businesses, VAT also affects NGOs. So examples of supplies that may require VAT analysis will include consultancy services, training programs, sale of publications, conference facilities, accommodation services, sales of merchandise. And as I have said earlier, this is not a blanket definition of VAT. If you want to know the in-depth details about the particular services, please look at the VAT Act. And if you want to know if they are exempt or not from VAT, then look at the first schedule of the VAT Act. So when an NGO makes a taxable supply above the registration threshold, as prescribed under Section 35 of the VAT Act, then the obligation will arise. Sorry, Section 34. And then I'd like us to talk about custom duties. So many charitable organizations import medical supplies. So these are basically exempt as far as both the VAT Act is concerned, and also some items in the Income Tax Act is concerned. Food, educational materials, relief, vehicles and equipment. So, okay, medical supplies are, most of them, they're exempt. So Kenya law provides reliefs for certain imports, subject to statutory conditions and approvals. However, import duty relief should never be assumed. So this is what usually happens. For you to be eligible for exemption from customs duties while you're an NGO, number one, you have to have an exemption certificate. You have an exemption certificate has to be in existence and it has to be valid. Then number two, if you are importing items for the use by the NGO, what you can do, you can actually apply. You can apply to the commissioner and it will be approved by the Minister of Finance for those items to be accepted into the country without paying duties. And let's say, for example, just a case example, let's say you have received, let's say, donations from, let's say, of laptops to be used by your NGO. So, and you have an exemption certificate. So you'll apply and it will be approved. That does not mean that when another shipment comes for laptops, you can use this approval. It is only on a case basis. It is usually consignment based, just for that particular consignment. You might find that it is an education facility has been given, let's say, laboratory equipment. So you apply to the Ministry of Finance, and they're going to approve. Because if you have got an exemption certificate and it shows that these items are going to be used by the organization, then they're going to be approved. So when another consignment comes, you have to apply again So it requires approvals, and you have to get that through supporting documents. Because if these checks were not in place, then people will be using NGOs as conduit places to import materials for commercial services. So this one is customs duties and import taxes are usually a gray area where it is on a case-to-case basis. But for you to qualify on any of either customs or import taxes, you have to have a valid exemption certificate. I hope I'm clear. Then we have record keeping. Record keeping is Section 54A of the Income Tax Act talks about record keeping. Section 43 of the VAT Act talks about record keeping. It's very important for NGOs to keep proper books of records. I'll give you an example. A lot of activities of the organizations, they usually, because with the nature of the NGOs, they do not exist in urban areas, for example. So you'll find that a lot of activities requires actually cash, whereby employees, let's say, for example, the director will go to the bank, withdraw money. After withdrawing money, he would distribute it according to the needs of the NGO. For example, if someone is going, let's say, to West Pokot, they are for a week, they'll be given transport money, they're going to be given accommodation, they're going to be given money for food on cash basis. So what KRA does is they will ask for your bank statement. They will look at the withdrawals, the ones which have been the cash withdrawals. Every cash withdrawal that is not supported by proper books of accounts, by proper documentation, then they're going to be charged pay as you want, because they are going to be assumed to be directors' drawings, which will be subject to payee. So imagine this. You're actually doing a lot of community work, community empowerment. You're doing a lot of community development. And let's say at the end of the year, the amount that had been withdrawn by cash, let's say it's 40 million or 30 million. But because you feel like you're an NGO, you do not have, you're reporting to your donors what you're doing, which is totally okay. At the ground, you are doing your activities, even there is pictorial proof. No one is doubting, but you do not have proper documentation. There's no general ledger, there's no cash book, there are no payrolls, there are no contracts, there are not procurement records, there are no tax invoices with the expenses. You do not keep a petty cash account, they are not properly kept. So you find yourself that you run a risk, the whole 40 million, if not properly, because the burden of proof is usually on the taxpayer. If you cannot prove by use of documents, then the whole 30 million is going to be assessed under payee. So let us be very careful about our record keeping. It might not sound much, but it actually counts a lot. Because good records do not merely satisfy auditors, they protect organizations from costly compliance costs. I hope I'm making sense. Because this non-compliance would lead to additional assessments, will lead to a lot of interest, penalties, lengthy audits, will have even reputational damage. Even the donor will have a lot of concerns. We'll have a lot of cash flow constraints, because the money that was supposed to be used for other purposes, for charitable purposes, will be used for either litigation or paying penalties. So in many cases, the tax itself is smaller than the accumulated penalties and interest, because they can do it for 5 years. So you'll find that it has accumulated a lot of penalties and interest. So if it finds that there is no tax amnesty in existence, then it will bring a lot of problems and a lot of cash crunch for the organization. So if we look at this, another illustration, it is usually, this one is for employment. So we have our Hope Foundation has 45 staff, 12 are consultants, 8 are volunteers, 3 are expatriates. So the question begs, how are you going to treat the 3? How are we going to treat the 3? I'll leave that question for the audience to answer. Yeah, so that at least I know that I've not been talking Greek or gibberish. It is something to ponder about and come up with answers. So I like to look at I like to go back to the chat box and see some of the queries that have been raised. So someone is asking, when buying items for a donor-funded project, do the suppliers have to charge a charitable trust VAT? The answer is yes, they would charge VAT, because at the end of the day, even your purchases are treated just like any other supply. The thing is, you are not going to, because VAT, when sold to a consumer, is usually final. So yes, you're going to be charged VAT and you're going to absorb the VAT. So do not go around asking for an exemption, unless the only bodies that are exempt from VAT are usually the Red Cross, and unless the organization is approved by the minister, then yes, they will charge you VAT. So it does not exempt you from being charged VAT. Let me look. So someone is asking, how does organization claim payments to consultants below 24,000? So make sure your consultants give you a native receipt, then you'll claim it. Yeah, make sure they give you an ATM's receipt. And if you think that ATM's receipts are unnecessary, then wait for the cost of compliance. Then you're not going to think it is cheap any other time. If you'd rather look for another consultant who is ready to give you an ATM's receipt, rather than assume that now because you are exempt from VAT, from income tax, don't require a native receipt. So I think I'll point out something. That is very important. In the subsequent years, we have seen a lot of whereby you can file your returns as an NGO and there will be nothing. Actually, none will really follow. But I'll picture this. For those of us who filed 2025 returns, we were required to validate our expenses. And the taxman has said that moving forward, it is going to be a web-based, whereby they're going to use information available with KRA. So number one, you do not have an exemption certificate, because in most cases, if you look at the basic information page, you usually ask if you have an exemption certificate. If you say yes, then you're going to enter the exemption certificate number. So you are an NGO. Number one, you do not have exemption certificate, right? So automatically the system will pick up that this one is a taxpayer. Then number two, you do not have the receipts to actually validate your income. So at the end of the day, it will automatically calculate that you have a tax payable. So especially moving on to this era of web-based, I'd like to encourage all NGOs to register to be tax exempt. There are a lot of requirements. It's a long process because we need to be your activities will need to be audited, but that will be the only way you're going to salvage your income from being taxed. Because if you have an exemption certificate, if you have a valid exemption certificate, and you already feed it in the first page of the returns, then automatically whatever the surplus is going to be at the end is not going to be taxable. So apart from ensuring that you have all your expenses are ETIPS compliant, make sure, try as much as possible to actually obtain an exemption certificate. It will go a very long way to help you actually file your returns easily and also avoid issues with KRA because it is a system based. It will calculate that you have income. So it will be now a matter of you going to prove to the taxman that you're not taxable. And the first question that they're going to ask you is why did you register for an exemption certificate? So I see most of the questions are being answered. Yeah, I see most of the questions have been answered. Thank you so much, my co-hosts. Yeah, we are moving on well. We are moving on well. So last but not least, I'd like us to look at the mistakes to avoid. An audit is like a medical checkup. The earlier you discover the problem, the less painful and less expensive it is to fix. Nobody enjoys receiving a KRA audit letter. The only thing worse is receiving two of them. Yeah, that will be a total nightmare. Because every charitable organization strives to maximize resources for the communities it serves. Yet many organizations lose significant amounts of money, not because they lack donor funding, but because they failed to comply with relatively straightforward tax obligations. In my experience in the field of KRA and tax, these audits from KRA rarely begins with allegations of fraud. They uncover, in most circumstances, they uncover routine compliance failures that have been accumulated over years. What usually starts as a small oversight in payroll processing or withholding taxes quickly grows into substantial assessments once penalties and interest are added. And as you've said it, the taxman can review your books for 5 years. So the interest and taxes that have accrued for 5 years usually dent a lot of organizations as far as their cash flows are concerned and their activities. So one of the questions frequently asked by taxpayers is, how did KRA find us? As in how? Most of the time, usually inconsistent tax returns. That is usually a very big trigger. And then there are persistent near returns, but your operations are very significant. You file near returns, but someone has withheld. Then you have that information. This is basically when you acquire assets. This is especially vehicles, when you acquire land and you pay stamp duty. Then you have got whistleblowers. These are usually, most of the time, disgruntled employees. They go to KRA and they set you up. In some cases, I'm not saying all. Then we have significant bank transactions. So you'll find that probably the CBK has flagged that your organization has received a lump sum of 10 million, but at the end of the year, still the organization is filing nil returns. Then you have contracts, especially procurement contracts, large procurement contracts, and Of course, it will give rise to curiosity from KRA. And then if you're reporting goods, even if they are under the relief program, of course, KRA will want to do an audit because it knows that there are activities there. Also, failure to respond to compliance notices. You've been told that your books need to be checked, but you're assuming. So it is basically one of the things that will trigger a KRA audit. So what are some of the major common findings in NGOs? Under payee, common examples usually include failure to tax benefits. They have benefits but are not being taxed. Then incorrect treatment of allowances. We have misclassification of employees as volunteers instead of employees. Then we have failure to account for if you have got any expatriates obligations. And also we have if you continuously delay in remitting your pay, then it will create a tax trigger. And also withholding tax failures. We have payments to consultants without deducting withholding tax. Then you apply the incorrect tax rate. Probably you're supposed to withhold it at 5, and then you did it at 3%, or it is a non-resident, supposed to be 20%, then you did 5%. Those are some of the common findings. Then you have got late remittances of tax and also missing withholding tax certificates. So under the VAT issue, the typical concern usually includes charging VAT incorrectly, or sometimes you claim input VAT without adequate documentation, or sometimes you fail to register. This one usually the major one, you fail to register for VAT despite making taxable supplies, and you are in the threshold bracket. And also incorrect treatment of mixed taxable and exempt. Yeah, so you claim the whole VAT instead of apportioning them if you're dealing with also exempt activities. So under income tax concerns, this usually arises when an organization fails to distinguish charitable trust from commercial income. So if there is no proper distinction, then there's a problem. Also, when you operate business without separating accounting records, because even when you tell KRA that the money that you generated from a business activity was from a commercial activity, was used for charitable purposes without proper documentation and accounting records, then that will just be in theory, and it will remain in theory. And as my friend likes to say, KRA wata consider kama stories za jaba. So ensure that you actually keep proper books of accounts. So I like to say this as we are concluding. Many tax disputes do not begin with accounting errors. They begin with a governance failure. A well-governed organization is more likely to maintain proper records, comply with statutory obligations, and identify tax risks before they become costly. So I'll tell you this: all these taxes that we have looked at, be it VAT, be it withholding, be it pay, none of these taxes are actually paid from the pocket of the NGO. Withholding taxes, this is basically if you're supposed to pay a consultant 100,000, you pay them 97,000, you withhold 3%, or you withhold, that's for a contractor. For a consultant, 5%, so you pay them 95%. This 5% that you've retained, you pay KRA, so you have not been affected. Number two, you have VAT. VAT you're basically charging 100,000. And then you add 16%, 16,000. You remain with your 100, and then you pay KRA 16,000. Nothing has been affected of yours. When it comes to pay, you're supposed to pay an employer 50,000, an employee 50,000, and then you deduct, let's say 7,000 for pay. You give them the employees 43,000, the 7,000 you pay KRA. None of these taxes actually affect the cash flow of the organization. So it is more of a governance issue. It is more of a management issue rather than a statutory obligation. So let us keep that. And also number two, documentation, that is your strongest defense. There's a common saying among tax practitioners, if it was not documented, it never happened. So because during audits, KRA usually relies on documentary evidence. That is all that they rely on. Not stories, not theories, exclusively documentary evidence. Because if it is not documented, it never happened. Incomplete or poorly organized records will greatly weaken an organization's ability to support its tax position. Ensure that you keep your records well. Ensure that you keep your records well. So these are basically some of the scenarios, and I think we have covered most of them. We have talked about the volunteer. We have talked about the conference center. We have talked about the consultancy. So yeah, I think we have covered a majority of them. So while we are preparing for our KRA audit, I'll just have a mention of this. And just to inform all of you, next week we are having a webinar by Dr. Regina, which will cover KRA audits in depth. You will not want to miss that. So I will large week. Be prepared for the audit. As far as concerned, I will give you costly the ensure that you can identify the gaps in your works, and also you can do something about them. It's surely cheaper when you discuss this. So these cases, I think we have covered majority of them. Yeah, we have covered. And by now, I think when looking at these case studies, you should be able to answer the discussion questions, because we have done a comprehensive covering of all the taxes that are involved with them. So by now, I think when you look at these cases, be it withholding taxes, be it volunteers and employees, be it the conference center, which tax affects which account and how are they treated, be it VAT, be it income tax, be it withholding. It is very Sorry about that. I hope I'm clear currently. I'm sorry that my voice was breaking. Please, what about right now? Am I audible? If you can hear me clearly, then give me a thumbs up. Uh, Absolutely not a thumbs down. Give me a thumbs up to. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're sorry about that. Sorry for about that short disconnection. So as I was saying, in this case studies, we have actually looked at majority of the areas. The reason as to why the case studies were put last was because that by the time we're looking at these case studies, you as the audience have the answers to this. And hopefully we have been able to answer most of your queries, be it through the webinar presentation, be it the questions that you have asked by which have been a lot of them, be it extended explanations. So you'll find that as far as NGOs are concerned, if you can be able to correctly classify the income, if you can be able to correctly classify how the income has been spent, if you can be able to classify the activities apart from donor grants that the organization carries, if you can be able to answer all those questions and answer them correctly, then you'll be in a better position to handle career audit queries. But most importantly, I will say this again, as far as taxes are concerned, if it was not documented, then it actually never existed. Yeah, so those are some of the areas that I wanted us to cover. But the thing is, this very last part about a health check, for an NGO, to ensure that you have a sound health, to determine how healthy your organization is, there are a couple of questions that you're supposed to ask yourself. Number one, is our tax exemption certificate current? Number two, have we distinguished exempt income from taxable income? Are employment taxes correctly accounted for? Are withholding taxes deducted and remitted on time? Have we reviewed our VAT obligations? Are donor agreements properly documented? Are commercial activities separately accounted for? Are our financial activities recorded completely? So ensure on an yearly basis, make sure that your organization undergoes a health check to ensure compliance. Because as far as care is concerned, it is never usually a matter of if, but a matter of when. Because as long as you have a KRA PIN, you are going to be reviewed. You are going to be asked to explain your accounts. So when that time comes, how ready will you be? And I'll say this, a lot of NGO never see the essence of an ETIMS. They say now we do not actually do any commercial activities, so we do not require an ETIMS. Currently, an ETIMS is compulsory for every organization that is in existence. You will find out that even currently you cannot have a tax compliance certificate if you do not have if you're not registered for ETIMS. Basically, this is the reason as to why you need to register for ETIMS even as an NGO. You're supposed to recognize the donor funding You're supposed to recognize the donor funding as your revenue. That is number one. Number two, if you are undertaking any other activities, commercial activities that you are using it to support the NGO, then you're supposed to issue an eTIMS receipt. So you cannot do all that if you do not have if you're not registered for eTIMS. So if you're an NGO and you want help in registration for an eTIMS, then you can reach out to us, or you can look for your tax consultant to help you go through it. But if you need help, we are more than ready to actually help you with that. But an important thing to note, NGOs are not exempted, are not one of the items, are not one of the organizations that are exempted from eTIMS. So you as an NGO should be registered for eTIMS and actually give out receipts, eTIMS receipts, because failure to do that, it's actually a crime. As far as the Income Tax Act is concerned, you're supposed to issue eTIMS receipts. So I think I felt like that is important to mention. So reach out to your tax consultant, reach out to us. We'll be more than able to help you do that. In conclusion, I'll say this. Wisdom is more like a boab tree. No one individual can embrace it. This simply means that no single officer, no trustee, no consultant possesses all the answers. Effective compliance requires collaboration between the management, the board, the auditors, the legal advisors, and the tax professionals. Without a marriage of all this, then information will not be complete. Also, as stewards of organizations entrusted with impacting lives, we have the responsibility to ensure that every shilling is managed with integrity, transparency, and accountability. Tax compliance is not about paying more taxes. It's about paying the right tax at the right time in the right amount, while serving the confidence of donors, regulators, and communities we serve. With me here, I have two books. I have the VAT Act, that's chapter 476. I have the Excise Duty Act. I have the TPA Act, and I have the Income Tax Act. So my question is, how would you like to be taken through a course that will cover all these tax laws? How badly would you want to understand tax laws, and not only the tax laws, and actually how the process of actually filing taxes and the process of actually defending yourself in case of you have a tax review. So we are having a taxation masterclass that we run from the 14th to the 25th. That's an online trading masterclass. And a physical one will run from the 9th to the 11th, both of them in September. I usually encourage people to actually attend the physical masterclass because it is usually the one which has physical interaction, whereby it is a one-on-one interaction with tax experts, whereby you can come with your list of questions that you have been having all that while, and they will be answered exhaustively, whereby these are the classes where you can actually interrupt a trainer in the middle when you have a question. So I encourage you to enroll for that. So they are in September, both physical and online. The physical is 50,000 Kenyan shilling, and the online is 25,000. Yes, they are NITA approved, and the training can be used to actually acquire CPD points as far as ISPAC is concerned. Then next week, 31st of July from 10 to 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Dr. Regina will be speaking on how to prepare for KRA tax audits. Basically, what usually happens, the period between July to December is usually the most heavily laden period for tax audits because it's a review of what you have filed. So what should you do when you get the letter from KRA? What are the processes when you have when you're going through an audit, when you're going through a review? What happens when you're given an assessment notice? How do objections go around? How are you supposed to handle appeals? So this is one of the webinars that you would not want to miss. It is a free webinar, and feel free to join. During the week, look at our socials. We shall provide the registration links for that webinar. You're much more welcome. We have talked a lot about bookkeeping and proper accounting practices. So having that in mind, we have an audit and bookkeeping masterclass in November that will run from the 4th to the 6th of November. That is the physical. And the online one will run from the 9th to the 20th. The online ones, both the tax and the audit masterclasses, usually run from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., 2 hours every day for 2 weeks. And for the physical one, is usually 3 exhaustive full days for the physical classes. So please join in to sharpen your bookkeeping practices and also actually to comply with the requirements of KRA as far as bookkeeping is concerned. Besides that, we have other tax services that we conduct. We have health checks, we have refunds. We handle health checks, we handle refunds, we handle tax planning. We do KRA representation on different issues. We handle KRA audits. We also do advisory as far as mergers are concerned, as far as transfer pricing is concerned. We also do tax trainings like the ones which we've actually mentioned. Yeah, so if you've got any queries, our contacts are in the chat box. So feel free to join. And probably as we end, I would like to look at 1 or 2 questions if that probably have that are in the chat box. So someone is asking, are the online sessions accredited? The answer is yes. For CPD, then someone is asking, when an NGO receives funds, is it supposed to raise an ATM receipt? The answer is yes. But for further information, please contact us, and also you can contact your tax consultant for registration purposes. Let me see if there is another question. Someone is asking if an NGO is run only by the director and he does not get any salary. He does not get any salary from it. Is he supposed to pay? If he does not get any benefit from it, then he has to prove that he has got a separate source of income. You cannot be running an NGO that runs into millions and you do not pay yourself a salary, but at the end of the day, you pay rent, you eat. How do you sustain yourself? But if you can prove that you actually do not need any funds you do not get any benefits from the NGO, then it is not compulsory if you've got no other employees, and if you do not receive any income. I would like to thank you so much for being such an amazing audience. If you have got any other questions, or rather you feel your questions have not been answered exhaustively, you can reach out to us. We'll offer taxation, or rather we'll offer consultancy services. And finally, one of our biggest achievements is actually coming up with a system that has been developed through realization of gaps in the existing bookkeeping account, or rather bookkeeping systems. So we came up with a system called My Accurate Books, which is basically a system that streamlines your books and most recently even your payroll system. I would like to, in the next 5 or so minutes, I'd like to give my colleague uh, just a chance to explain to you about My Accurate Books and how it can impact your bookkeeping as far as your business is concerned, and also how it can make it easier for you to keep proper books of accounts. Besides that, I would like to really appreciate you guys for being such an amazing audience. And until next time, you have an amazing day and an amazing weekend ahead. So my colleague Victor, welcome to take the audience through the My Accurate Books.
Thank you, Moki. Yes, good afternoon, team, and thank you all for making time for the presentation. So, as my colleague mentioned, this is Victor, and I'll be taking you through this amazing software called My Accurate Books that we came up with to help business owners manage their businesses seamlessly and in a streamlined way. So, just give me a moment as I share my screen so that I can see the software. All right, there you go. So this is what you're seeing is the website for My Accurate Books. And also I would like to mention that there are actually two versions of this system. We have the website, and we also have the mobile application. So that means you can run with the system using your laptop or your computer. And also you can run with it on the phone. So you simply on the phone, you simply go to Google Play and search My Accurate Books. You'll find the application there, and you'll be able to install it on your phone. So I would like to start with saying this, that if you are still guessing or still counting in a book, you are probably losing money without knowing it. Stock goes missing, prices get forgotten, and the numbers never add up. So My Accurate Books puts your sales, stock, and profit in one place on any phone or any device that you are using. So you'll be able to know what's selling, what's running low in stock, and exactly what you made every day or every month or every week. And at the end of the day, you are also able to generate reports, accounting reports, business reports. With a click of a button, you are able to do that. So without further ado, I'll log into a live account and be able to show you how the system works in a nutshell. So just give me a moment as I log into my account. So simply to log in, you simply key in your credentials. That's the password and the email that you use to create the account. And then you say sign in or log in. Then the system will be able to sign you in and it will bring you to the landing page. This is the dashboard analytics page. And as you can see, just at a glance, you are able to see the position of the business in terms of total sales made, expenses, purchases, and the position of the business in terms of profit or loss for a particular period of time. So by default, this analysis that you are seeing here is an analysis for the past 30 days. So that's by default. You can always be able to filter that period. So if you want maybe to show the month of July, you just simply filter to the month of July. And then that analysis will show how the month of July is performing so far. So you go as far as you want, or you can go as back as you want, and then you'll see that analysis. So then down below there, you are also able to see a graphical representation of your sales. So this is just an analysis in a graphical format. So you can switch that graph to a bar chart if you want to. So that one shows you your daily sales performance. All right. Then also you are able to see your debtors and creditors down below here. So a very simplified and appealing analysis that will be able to guide you in minutes and help you with planning for your business effectively and efficiently. So with that being said, how now do you arrive to these figures? I'll take you through these features so that you can be able to record sales, record expenses, and also be able to take a look at your profit and loss. So to start, you start by adding your items under inventory. So under inventory, we have products and services. So under products and services, this is where your stock will be added, and this is how it will be listed. And on top of that, the system is able to alert you that a certain product is running out of stock or it's out of stock. So that way you are able to make arrangements and do restocking. So so you can add services if you are in the service industry, and also you can add products if you are in the production industry. We also have stock transfer. This if you have several outlets, you can transfer stock from one outlet to another. Maybe you have a workshop and you have a shop that sells the products that come from the workshop. You can transfer the products from the workshop to the shop with a click of a button. Then you can also create item categories for your you can create item categories for your items or products. So maybe you have food, edible items, maybe whichever way you want to categorize your products, depending maybe with the brand, that sort of thing. And then also we have stock control. Under stock control, you can do stock takes and make sure that all your stock is in order and that sort of thing. Then we also have a point of sale. So if you come under sales, you'll be able to view sales. If you want to take a look at your sales over time, so you can take a look at your sales. So on top of that, you're able to see what you total sales made, total revenue billed, total revenue collected, and items sold. And that's the list of your sales. So you can filter and you can filter as per the status, whether paid, unpaid, or partially paid. Yes, or even users. So if you have employees and you want to take a look at what each employee sold or did sell, you are able to just click on their filter their name, and you're able to see what they sold. We also have under sales. Now we can make a sale. So under that, you can make process your sales or generate receipts and invoices. You can also generate quotations. You can create credit notes against sales. You can also receive payments on invoices. You can then also you can also have a list of your customers in the system, whereby you can be able to track the payments of the customers in that order. Then you can also have your transactions, all transactions made. You'll be able to, you can take a look at all transactions with a click of a button like that. So external transactions, internal transactions, all those transactions, you're able to do that. You can also process purchases. In the process of restocking, you can always be able to do that. Under purchases, we have, you can place purchase orders. You can also process purchases in real time, create debit notes. You can have a list of your suppliers so that you can be able to, track how you are paying them in that manner. Then also you can also pay purchases. Then we have expenses management feature, whereby you'll be able to keep track of your expenses and generate reports, generate expenses report, and see how your business is spending money on the expenses that you incur. We also have accounting. So you'll be able to generate accounting reports with a click of a button. So if you want your charts of accounts, you want your journal entries, you want your asset management, all those reports are available at your disposal. Then, for example, with a click of a button, I'm able to generate my balance sheet. Just like that, I'm able to generate it. And I'm able to also download or generate a PDF report of the same in that order. With a click of a button, I'm able to do that automatically. Then also you can be able to generate your basic reports. So basic reports like inventory report, you want to see stock movement, that sort of thing. You can be able to generate it. You can also be able to generate your profit and loss report. So you can always be able to filter the period. You filter the period, then be able to generate either an Excel report or a PDF report showing you your income in that order. Same to sales report, creditors report, customers report. All those reports are at your disposal. Then we have a feature here for employee management or user management. So if you have employees, you can be able to add them. So the system can be used, it's a multi-user system, in other words. So you can add your users and give them controls. So you add for example, if you added a user, you can give them controls and assign them permissions so that they are only able to access parts of the system that you want them to access. So if their role is sales, you give them only sales role permissions so that they are not accessing parts of the system that you don't want them to access. Then next, if you also have outlets, I mentioned earlier, you can be able to manage several branches. And on top of branches, the system is also able to allow you to do multi-business management. So if you have several businesses, you can be able to manage them under the same account, the same system. Then we also have, you can customize your documents like invoices, quotations, receipts. Then under settings, those are just settings of the system. Maybe you want to edit your profile in that order. You want to set your terms and conditions for the business so that they can appear on invoices. You can do that. And then also the system has items. So you can always be able to, if you want to generate items, invoices or receipts, you can be able to do that using My Accurate Books. And then we have My Accurate Pay. This one is also a wallet, My Accurate Pay wallet, which is used for petty cash management. And you just click there and you're able to sign up. You do a KYC and you'll be able to use it. You can use it to make payments, receive payments. And at the end of the day, you can be able to generate real-time reports or statements. Then last but not least, we also have payroll, and I'll be welcoming my colleague Timothy to take you through this amazing payroll system for you to be able to manage your payroll. So with that being said, maybe I'll take a look at the questions, maybe put pause room for questions that might have arisen. Just a moment. Yes. Yes, so any questions on the chat box? Let me take a look at the questions. All right. All right, so let me take a look at the question. So there's a question on if the system is free. The answer is no. The system is on a subscription basis. So we actually have very affordable and pocket-friendly rates. So yes. So on that question, you can take a look at, we have from as low as 500 shillings per month to 800 shillings, depending on the needs of the business. And then can you use it for several companies? Yes, the answer is yes. You can use the system for several companies. You can manage several businesses using the system. And then yes, the system does have a payroll module, and my colleague will be talking about it shortly. Any other questions? Yes, anyone can use the system. Can this be used for small business? Yes, anyone can use the system. Yes, for their business management. So for any other questions, you can direct them to our contact information on the chat box, and you will be answered shortly afterwards. So with that being said, thank you so much for your time. And I would like to take this opportunity to welcome my colleague Timothy, who will be taking you through the payroll system. And without further ado, welcome Timothy.
Thank you so much, Rita, and thank you, team, for joining. So just allow me to share my screen. Yes, kindly confirm in the chat if you are able to see my screen. Okay, so I'll just dive straight into a small slide presentation, then we see the actual system. Thank you once again for joining this session. My name is Timothy, part of RWK Africa, and also part of the developers team. So after a very long discussion within the team and the problems that some of our customers experience, we added a payroll module, just as the questions were, in our ERP system. So this is an introduction to My Accurate Payroll. So what is My Accurate Payroll? This is a payroll system and also a bit of HR management system, as you will see in a few. Most of the organizations and companies have compliance pressure. This is everything that we had before from Timothy as well. When it comes to pay, slow manual cycles, and also audit trail. So this system is meant to solve all of that. So for this workspace, um, we solve and we'll see in a few how payroll can be run and also very professional bookkeeping. So with our system, you'll be able to review and approve full payroll in less than 10 minutes. For complex organizations, we have role-based access, which we'll see in the demo after the presentation. And we have a very flexible system so that we can actually modify and customize it to fit your organization needs. So a list of the core modules that we are going to see in the demo will be the payroll workspace, compliance, salary advances, which is very important, attendance and leave. This is for organizations where we have employees that the payroll is based on attendance, maybe daily, or those who don't follow the organization attendance or take unpaid leaves. The system actually logs and captures that data. Our system will also have an employee portal where functions such as getting pay slips, applying for advances, and even tracking KPIs can be done straight in the system. We are going to demonstrate that in the demo. So with this system, you're able to do calculations. It auto-calculates for you, so it avoids human error and also manual calculations. And another very important thing, just as my accurate book we saw, the system has user roles and rights. So according to the organization structure, we're able to configure such a way that an admin does this, HR does this, the finance manager does this. So this is a very clear flow of exactly what our payroll module does. This will be one, you're able to create employees and have a digital records of all the employees, capture times and attendance, automatically calculate payroll, review and approval, as we will see in a few, so that you can have multiple approvals before a payroll run. Automatically generate pay slips, which can be configured in the settings, whether to email every employee the pay slips or allow the employees to log in into their employee portal to download when needed. So for payments, depending on your organization, we can integrate with our own My Accurate Pay system, whereby we will handle the batch payments for you, or integrate with the bank so that we can do RTGS. We also have PesaLink, which have very good rates as for now, where you just do everything in the system, then our system will be able to disburse the funds automatically and keep records. So as Victor said, so our solution, we have the MyAccurate Payroll, which works closely with the MyAccurate Books, which we have just seen the demo, and MyAccurate Pay, which can actually automate petty cash management and also an integration for salary payment. So apart from those, we can integrate with your existing accounting system. Maybe you're using SAP, maybe you're using Sage, maybe you're using QuickBooks, Zero, and so on and so forth. So we can always integrate with your actual ERP or accounting system. As I mentioned earlier, we do RTGS, PesaLink, and Pesa or EFT. So depending on what is functional for a specific organization, we have that integration as well, so that you automate the payroll and automatically keep the record. So this is also a paid service, so we'll review the same. So I'll just jump straight into the demo. And as we go on, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat so that you can pre-plan and prepare to answer each and every one of us. So we'll paste the website, the link to the web application. So this is actually available as a web app. Let me just minimize the team. I hope my screen is very visible. So we have a quick landing page, a very nice calculator for just playing around. Maybe for example, you can say gross salary of 700,000. Then you can see all the deductions. So to have these automatic deductions for your actual staff, what you need to do is click on data free trial. So here we'll quickly go through just small KYC and choosing a plan. So I'm just going to, because of time, I'm just going to log in with an existing account. Yeah, allow me to check for an OTP. So the system is very secure. So all login attempts, we have OTP. Because we have very critical data. So once you have this, just go straight to company portal. As a company admin, just go through the features, not really go a deep dive in, but anyone or any company that needs such a system, please let us know, and also let us know your current system and maybe the challenges that you have been facing. So as a company admin, I've logged in as a company super admin with almost all the rights. So yeah, you have a dashboard with all your payroll and headcounts. And in case you want to hide some features, numbers, you can do that. For employees, we have 3 ways of adding employees. You can download a template and then bulk upload with all the employees. Or you can manually add 1 employee, maybe it's a new joiner. And to even make it better, you can generate a link. When you just put a few details for the employee will receive an email to self on board. This is where they'll be prompted for their employment, their contract, and all the documents. And once they are done, you get notified to approve them. Once you have all the employees onboarded, you can go straight to running a payroll. So for this step, let's say, for example, you want to run a payroll. You can select a month, review all the employees. If any data was changed by HR or somebody, let's say the salary amount, you'll be able to get notified here before every change has to be reviewed by the admin. Just put a pin. Some of us don't just expose. Maybe you're somewhere so people see your screen to hide any critical data. So for this example, I have 2 employees. So when I review and run, you can see all the calculations for the payroll is done, maybe the gross, paid, deductions, the tax relief, personal relief, final pay, and net pay. So when you run this, we have a maker checker. Maker checker. So according to your organization structure, so the creator in this situation cannot approve what he has just prepared. So we need like a head of finance. Or if you are a solo director, we can have that right where you can self-approve. So we have that. So for every payroll run, you're able to get reports, automated reports, which I'll just go in a second. And something I didn't mention is that custom deductions for organization, you can always add custom deductions. Maybe it is a welfare that applies to all employees or some employees. So we have that already. So once you put it, you don't have to do manual Excel calculations for a run. If you have consultants as well, you can also add them separately, maybe temporary consultants, because they have a different tax obligations. And the system also has a salary advance, which we'll see once I log in as an employee. If you allow it in the settings, employees can actually request for advance, and once it is disbursed, you're able to see all this. And in case you also have attendance-based pay, whereby somebody is paid according to the number of days they worked during that specific month. So these are things you can actually configure in your company profile and actually use them to actually run payroll, and it will actually auto calculate for you. So that's it for the payroll bit. I mentioned attendance. So the system has QR or location-based attendance already there. MyAccurate Payroll also supports leave. This is now more of HR. So every employee has a like self portal. They can apply for leave, and then they can be approved or rejected from here. And then the leave balances and everything is visible across the organization. So as we learned earlier, so compliance reports through MyAccurate Payroll, actually digital reports, you're able to see all the P9 tax form, P10, if it is SHA, remittance, how much you need to remit, this, how much have you remitted the whole year, and it's very important for audit. And it's very easy, simple, because once during audit, you can simply just add a user as an auditor. We'll just look at compliance and download all the reports. So I'll go straight to reports. While payroll can seem very complicated, MyAccurate Payroll makes it very automated. So when it comes to statutory reports, you can simply filter for specific month, and then you get NSSF, what you need to remit and what you need to actually go and submit in the portal. You can have housing levy, you can have SHA, meter, and any other report that you need. So there is no manual calculation, and the system always uses the latest KRA practices and actually rates from KRA, NSF, SHA, housing levy, and any other statutory deduction requirements. That's the very interesting feature we added in MyAccurate Payroll, which is just a calendar that tells you your deadline. Maybe you need to run payroll by this date. Remittance for SHA is due very soon. So you're able to actually commit and look at all this. And just for bookkeeping in compliance, let's say if you need any reports, like how many percent or which amount, you always because you have not run any approved payroll, but they will always appear here. Lastly but not least, the MyAccurate payroll have a very flexible settings for a company. When it comes to attendance, which is QR based or location based, you put your GPS here and a QR where people will just scan and have a digital time clock in and clock out. Billing and plans can actually review all the billing and plans from the main website, but it's actually one of the most affordable payroll modules. Internal wallet setup through my accurate uh, pay. Once you connect it or link it to my accurate pay, you're able to disburse payroll straight from here. So no need to do log into banks or have a ready file, then email to a bank, then wait for 12 hours. So you can actually do disbursement here, and every record and every transaction is actually recorded automatically. Yes. So I think just so that I don't forget, we have journals. You can download these manual journals and plug them into your actual accounting system, or we can actually just integrate with your existing accounting system. So that these are all automated, and which will save a lot of time and avoid human error. So just going to quickly, this is a super admin, so I can just quickly switch to employee. Now this is a login for a worker. This one I will not go so deep. It's very mobile friendly. So simply an employee can log in, check their payslip, request leave, just set some goals, apply for a salary advance if the organization setting accepts that, and maybe update their profile. So that's it. That's it for the brief payroll review. I'm going to check for any questions before we close. Yes, definitely can be used by NGO. Yeah, because NGO, as we learned earlier, also might or has a payroll. We have workers, we have HR, so it can be used by NGO and it uses the KRA tab. Catherine, I didn't get this question very well, but I'll ask the co-host to share a link so that once you just put it, we can have almost a full demo for a payroll for anyone who or any organization that wants to check. Even if you already have a payroll system, you can actually just check to compare, and maybe you can actually learn from me what are the challenges that you are experiencing. Yes, we are recording. The presentation is being recorded. Yes, and yes. So thank you so much for answering the questions in the comments. So thank you very much, team, for joining. Let's say at least one thing in the comment section, the meeting chat. Just what you have learned today. What is very inspiring, and what you can improve based on the lesson today. Thank you. So I guess if we don't have any further comments and questions, I want to thank each and every one of us and wish us a very blessed weekend ahead, and looking forward to having more sessions like this. And I will actually just paste in the links to our system for any, just for reference. Yes, so the co-host will actually share the link. Let us know if you're interested in reviewing our payroll system or our bookkeeping system. And thank you so much, Tim. Thank you for joining. So from our end, we don't have any other presentation. So this is to wish each and everyone has a very blessed weekend, and once again to appreciate for joining the session. Thank you and have a blessed weekend.